This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Batman needs a team that can operate on the sly. You will be that team. I will deploy you on missions.
Real missions?
Yes, but covert. You'll do it on league terms.
What are we waiting for?
This team is not a social club.
Young Justice.
Hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of the DCAU Review. This is of course episode 194, and I am Liam. With me, as he always is Cal. Cal, it is a 5 Saturday month, and being that it is the 5th Saturday in a 5 Saturday month, that means it's time to take a little trip around the multiverse.
That is correct, Liam, and with most of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, specifically here in North America, dealing with the winter weather and all that is happening and coming with the dog days of winter. That's not a saying, but the deep, dark days of winter. As you mentioned last week, we decided we would do a little winter themed episode, and we went back to what a lot of listeners actually clamor for a lot, it seems, and demand. So we went back to reviewing the series, the beloved, almost cult classic series, Young Justice, and we will be covering today the Kid Flash centric episode, Coldhearted.
That is right. Of course, as you mentioned, we've reviewed a couple episodes of Young Justice before. Since it's an Elseworlds tale, we kind of pick and choose what we get into. There is some, and I think that may affect some of. There's definitely some continuity stuff that I think. Thankfully, it's not a big part of the episode that we covered, because we definitely there's new people that we haven't met before that are just kind of already there. So we definitely missed some things, but thankfully, the episode itself is pretty self-contained and easy to watch, even if you are like us, are not a long time fan of the show or are not watching the entire show in order from start to finish. So yes, as you mentioned, Cal, this is a review of Coldhearted, and we will get to our thoughts on the plot, the visuals, the music, and the animation, as well as the voice acting in just a few minutes here. But first, of course, I must grace us with the still yet to be sponsored Imdb synopsis for this week's episode.
That's right. You know what? I'm just going to say, you know what? We're going to throw out a sponsor here. Sponsored by the Pod Tower, since we're official members of the Pod Tower. Okay. Well, IMDb's never going to sponsor us. The Pod Tower IMDb synopsis. Find us on the Pod Tower on YouTube. Like and subscribe and like our videos. And hey, you can catch programming from other DCAU content creators as well. So this is a landmark episode where we're sponsored now, unofficially, still unofficially, not officially sponsored, unofficially sponsored by our own co-partnered YouTube channel.
That's right. All right. So this is the official IMDb synopsis for Coldhearted, which is written by John Wiseman, directed by Victor Cook, with music by the Dynamic Music Partners and animation by MOI Animation. And that synopsis reads as such. On his birthday, Kid Flash must deliver a transplanted heart in a race against time, artificial extreme weather conditions, and supervillain opposition.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid one. So from there, Cal, we can start to get into our first category, which is, of course, plot. This is as you said, a very Kid Flash centered story. We arrive. It is a snowy day. We find out very quickly it is Wally West's birthday. He's excited that not only does he not have to go to school because of the snow day, but he quickly finds out that there's a meeting that he's going to Mount Justice, to the Young Justice headquarters, to meet up with his friends, the rest of the team. And when he gets there, not only does he first find a surprise birthday party, but then we get sort of the excitement, the mission which is sort of doled out by Batman. So there's a lot. They kind of move at a clip there. There's a little bit of Wally at home there at first, and then he goes to the Mount Justice, and he has his birthday party. I guess by this point in the series, it's sort of been revealed to everyone on the team now including Wally, that Miss Martian and Superboy are in a relationship. So maybe from this point forward in the series, Kid Flash stopped being such a weird little creep.
Make a wish.
Way ahead of you. You know, if I tell you my wish, it won't come true. But if you guess... Nope. Guess again.
Happy birthday.
You settling in here okay?
Oh, yeah. It's just like home.
I know this is all very new and intimidating, but I promise you, someday, you'll get used to watching Wally eat.
Think we should tell him?
You're getting warmer, babe, but I can make you warmer still. He is the only one who doesn't know.
Then please, allow me.
Oh man!
And that gets to as we say here, we'll get to the full plot here in a second. But just as a broad strokes here, I hate Kid Flash's happiness. He's insufferable for so much of this. Every moment in this episode that he is happy, I hate him. Like, I was glad when Batman didn't let him come on the fun mission. Like, I was like, just taken down a peg. But yes, as the birthday party rolls on, and we see, of course, Robin and Miss Martian and Superboy and Artemis, Zatanna, and Aqualad all there, as well as Red Tornado and Barry Allen, the Flash himself, all there to celebrate Wally. There's a message from Batman that there is an important mission going on, as it turns out that this snow that was affecting Wally's hometown seems to be affecting the entire United States. And because it's sort of an all hands on deck situation, for the first time, the team will sort of be publicly teaming up with the Justice League. Well, that is the entire team except for one, that of course being Kid Flash.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it, I guess, in voice acting more than likely later, but the majority of this episode takes place with an internal monologue from the Kid Flash. So he's narrating it from start to not narrating it. You're just literally hearing what he's thinking. Mm-hmm. And from the very beginning, he's very excited about his food. And as you mentioned, he's excited that he's going to get this. He's hoping to get his birthday kiss from Miss Martian. And then that hope gets dashed, as you mentioned, as he is made aware that Superboy and Miss Martian are an item. So he's disappointed there, and it sort of sets up everything for the episode, where he has these expectations. He feels like he's on top of the world, and then things sort of the rug gets proverbially pulled out from underneath of him. So yes, he is very excited to join in with the other Leaguers and team up with everybody. And then, as you mentioned, Batman sets aside him, in fact, to go on a special mission, which you would think, being the glory hog that he is, that he would appreciate the fact that he gets to be the sole hero in this portion of the story. But he, of course, being the spoiled brat that he is not exactly thrilled, initially going so far as to question just who it is that he's helping, as Batman reveals that his mission is to head to Boston and then across the United States to the state of Washington to deliver a heart transplant to a girl that is in desperate need of one.
And with both Green Lanterns off-world, I need all hands on deck.
Does that mean what I think it means? The League and the team fighting side by side? Whoa, really? Now that's a birthday wish come true.
Superboy, use the supercycle to rendezvous with the Batplane at Ice Fortress 1. You'll drop off Robin and Aqualad, then continue on with Wolf to meet up with Black Canary and Red Tornado at Ice Fortress 2. Miss Martian, Artemis, and Zatanna, take the bioship and rendezvous with Green Arrow and Martian Manhunter at Ice Fortress 3. Other Leaguers will deal with Fortresses 4 and 5. Sending all coordinates now.
Batman? I think you skipped...
Kid Flash. A young girl in Seattle is in desperate need of a heart transplant. With all conventional air traffic grounded by the storm, you'll need to pick up the donor heart in Boston and run it 3,000 miles across country.
No. He can't seriously expect me to skip the first ever league team up. Who is this girl?
Does it matter?
No, of course not. But can't we Zeta?
Zeta tubes are offline. Sorry.
Right. Then how can I say no? Seriously, how? Guess I won't be needing stealth. Speedy delivery boy, at your service.
And as the weather that is being artificially created, we learn through these giant machines across the U.S. is blanketing the entire country. That Kid Flash is going to have to not only battle time, but also the elements. And as we see, he sort of ends up battling a couple of additional things along the way. He makes his way up to Boston, where he has a rude interaction with. By the way, we learn that this is his 16th birthday, yet he is openly hitting on and questioning whether or not, through his internal monologue, if he should ask for the number of the adult doctor or nurse, perhaps, or physician's assistant that is handing off the heart to him in Boston. So, this little guy, he's
little creep.
He's something, all right. So he takes off across the U.S. and, of course, just as you might suspect, things don't go quite as smoothly for him as a straight shot. As when he gets across the Midwest or so, he encounters a familiar foe, someone that you may know by name and someone that you may know visually, perhaps from past episodes of this. As we mentioned, we're not doing these in order, but this is a character that has been brought up on the show at some point, and that is one Vandal Savage, who, of course, DCAU fans are quite familiar with, DC Comics fans definitely familiar with. So he makes an appearance as he's roughing up some of these cops that have been tasked with clearing the way for Kid Flash, clearing traffic and the elements that are affecting on his cross-country journey. So now, one very important aspect of this heart delivery is that he is given a limited amount of time to reach his destination. So starting in Boston, which of course is in the northeast of the United States, he has to travel across all the way to the literal opposite point of the map in the western side of the United States, the northwest of the U.S., that being Washington State. So he's given 4 hours to complete his mission. And when he gets to the Midwest and encounters Vandal Savage, he has about an hour and a half left. And he decides that this is his time to shine, so to speak, that he's going to defeat Vandal Savage on his own, and he begins sort of this attempted beatdown, and they end in sort of a stalemate that basically only wastes 15 minutes or so of his time. And we get a flash as he's sort of running out of juice, so to speak. He ate all his snacks and he's burned a lot of calories as he's running across the nation. And as he arrives at the hospital in Washington, he is delivered some unfortunate news.
Kid Flash, I made it. I'm here.
I'm sorry. You're too late.
No! Look, I've got almost 20 minutes to spare.
I know, but she passed away 12 minutes ago.
12? 12 minutes?
Please, don't blame yourself. I'm sure you got here as fast as you could.
Yeah, that is right. So he arrives seemingly with time to spare, but he's informed by a doctor who sort of meets him right out in front of the hospital that, in fact, it is too late and that the girl has died just 12 minutes ago. And of course, Wally immediately feels very guilty because, as mentioned, he had this 15-minute fight with Vandal Savage, and if he had kept on his journey instead of stopping, he would have, he could have made it in time. But as we quickly find out, there's something amiss with this supposed doctor, as he very quickly takes the heart from Wally and sort of wraps it up in a coat and begins to make his way to an elevator to the parking garage. As Kid Flash is just sort of moping in the lobby of the hospital, and the rest of the surgical team sort of runs up to him and asks him where the heart is. And Kid Flash sort of realizes that he's been had and makes his way down to the parking garage, where he finds not only a couple of armed bad guys looking to take the heart with them, but in fact another big time supervillain. I don't think that's one that we've touched on before, but I believe he had appeared in this series prior, and that is of course Count Vertigo. And we have talked about him because he's in the Batman episode. I forgot.
Yeah, we talked about him with director of the episode, Kevin Altieri.
I think because like the comic book Count Vertigo is so drastically like he's in this silly green costume,
right?
Like that, it never clicked in my head that was supposed to be the same guy, as even though he is also named Vertigo in that episode in Off Balance. So
yes,
but yes, so I guess for the second time here on our show, we're talking about Count Vertigo, but we find out that in fact the little girl who is in need of this heart transplant is in fact the 10-year-old queen of this country, and that her uncle is Count Vertigo, and that if the little girl does not survive this transplant, that she will be dying. Her closest living relative, Count Vertigo, will in fact become the new king. And so of course he wants to stop that from happening. And so Kid Flash has a sort of brief fisticuffs from him. He's able to sort of overcome Count Vertigo and his thugs, and finally get the heart to the surgical team. And then he sort of passes out, and we're not quite sure if he's been successful or not. At first, it seems that he isn't. In fact, as we see a news report, we see Wally's parents watching his Aunt Iris on the news, who informs the viewers that the Queen is dead and that she died on the operating table. As Wally sort of comes to, he's being taunted by the supposed new King Vertigo, who's very proud to share that not only did was Vandal Savage there specifically to slow Wally down from delivering the heart so that it might better improve the chances that she wouldn't survive, but that yes, he has been working to find different ways to murder this little girl. And the best thing is that he didn't actually have to lift a finger to kill her. And at that point, we reveal behind just like a curtain in the same room, which I thought was really funny, that in fact, actually the 10-year-old, the young queen, is still alive, and they now have audio evidence of her uncle claiming that he was attempting to kill her.
As King of Latava, I'm untouchable.
Let's test that theory. Ow!
Now, little hero, you'll pull your stitches. Besides, who exactly are you mad at, hmm? She died on the table. All that planning, all that effort. Neither of us need have bothered.
Right. And now it must kill you to know that you owe favors to Vandal Savage and, I'm guessing, 5 ice villains for nothing.
Not at all. They played their roles in my attempt to rid Vlatava of Perdita. We couldn't know it was unnecessary.
So you all still deserve credit for attempted murder?
It's called regicide.
It's called... You're busted, jerkface! I believe you know Queen Perdita.
No. It's called regicide.
Count Werner Vertigo, as Queen of Latava, I hereby accuse you of high treason against the crown and revoke your diplomatic immunity.
No!
Send this clown to Bel Rev.
Well played, children. Admittedly, well played.
And so that allows her, as the queen, to waive his former diplomatic immunity that he used to get out of previous legal troubles. and he is arrested, and Wally is able to sort of take a little joy in the fact that at the end of the day he learned his lesson. We see a shot of him, or we see a scene of him back in the trophy room at Mount Justice, where he and Robin are sort of discussing things, and he puts the container that he carried the heart in on the shelf, and sort of tells Robin that this was sort of the correct item to make the souvenir of this mission, and that he sort of realized that he was the luckiest guy in the world, and that the best gift he could have received on this birthday wasn't necessarily action or adventure. It was just the fact that he was able to save this little girl's life and see her smile. So we learn a lesson as we come to an end.
Yes, we sure do. Wally is certainly never going to be that little creep that craves the spotlight anymore. Just kidding. So yeah, I guess, by the way, I don't think I said it in the intro, but this episode, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of this episode. And I think in some ways, characters like this that are just grotesquely over the top, toxic masculinity, like hopefully we've made it to the point where those guys, if they're in animation or they're in shows like this, that they're the ones that are made fun of. Obviously in this case, Kid Flash does not get rewarded very much for his toxic masculinity, but he's also not really doesn't really learn too many lessons, it seems, from the way that he talks to women, or the way that he generally thinks about women. So that's something that's changed, hopefully, perhaps in the last 10 years of what we might see. But let me kick my soapbox out of the way. I would say, I think, as I mentioned, we have a majority of this episode that is narrated by an internal monologue. And my issue with that, especially with the particular voice performance, when we'll talk about this later on, is that at times it feels very much like I am watching somebody else play a video game. Like it ventures almost into the video game territory, where the exposition and narration that is being done internally comes off as if it's just that classic video game narration. And by the end of this episode, I was almost actively rooting against Wally to lose, just because he's unlikable. So that's something. I will say there were elements that I did like. I liked that they kept cutting to the battle that was happening above Wally, letting you know that wasn't just a plot device to get Wally on this mission. So we did get some really exciting action scenes that were in the skies that we can talk about certainly in visuals in a moment. But I liked that paralleled. I liked that there was a little twist in that thinking. It was a double twist, sort of. You think that Wally is unsuccessful, and that was one twist, and then we get the twist that actually she is still alive, and then we get the twist at the end, of course, where she's dead. They announce that she's dead, and then we find out she actually is alive again. So you get that back and forth and almost tugging on your heartstrings type thought. I felt like it was, you could see it coming from a mile away, though, that they were blackmailing or sort of luring Count Vertigo into this false sense of security in order to expose him, because I believe you mentioned his diplomatic immunity was hinged on the fact that he could not be proven to do anything illegal to attempt to ascend to the throne, essentially. And then obviously is out here openly taunting Kid Flash that he had done such, and that he had attempted to kill the queen. So it's a fine episode. I think we'll talk about what I think is best next in our order here, but it's fine. I think the twists at the end sort of saved it from being just a somewhat annoying episode. So I ended up with an okay 6 out of 10.
Very good there. Mine's a little bit lower. I went 4 out of 10. There's some things here that I have. One, I didn't particularly care for I feel like it's the same twist twice.
Sure.
Like they tell you 2 different times that she's dead and she's not dead. So I was like, all right,
But that's the bigger twist. She's dead, but she's
Sure.
not. But she's dead.
Sure.
She's not.
My other thought is like at the beginning of the episode, Batman tells him a girl is in desperate need of a heart transplant. And Wally, very, huffy puffy, as you said, he's huffing and puffing and complaining a lot, even in his inner monologue and directly to Batman. He goes, "Who is this girl?" And Batman said, "Doesn't matter." And Wally says, "No, you're right. It doesn't." Which I thought at the time was like a really great moment, because I thought the lesson was going to be there is, whether you are fighting robots or weather machines or saving the life of one single child, you're still a hero. And like, and these things are not, one is not more important than the other.
Sure.
But
it's not. It's
but
revealed
it's not.
to be.
She's the queen of a country, and her uncle is a supervillain, and another supervillain teams up with her supervillain uncle to slow him down. Like
Sure.
there's I guess that's the other little swerve is Vandal Savage mentions that he was expecting the real Flash, and that he and the Flash had some sort of run-in previously, and that this was supposed to be revenge. But then later it turns out actually, Vandal Savage, through I guess his association with Count Vertigo in the Injustice Gang, was helping him out to slow down the heart transplant. So like I feel like that lesson gets muddied a little bit, because it wasn't just a girl needed a heart transplant. It was the queen of a country that if she had died, a supervillain would have controlled a country. Like that to me is like, that kind of flies in the face of what was said earlier. And yeah, I also just feel like, if the girl had died for real, if they had really actually had the girl died, I'm not advocating for this, but if they had done that and Wally had done something like really irresponsible on the way, I feel like it would have made more sense. But as it stands, he went straight to it. He stopped because he saw Vandal Savage brutalizing a bunch of police officers. Like he saw a supervillain, like a world famous supervillain. He didn't stop to like play video games or eat fast food or anything, or or see a movie or something. Like he didn't like, so I didn't feel like because I feel like the lesson is supposed to be like, it's responsibility and there's no job too small, and we're all, all these people are heroes in their own way.
Sure.
But I feel like it's muddied, because like if in fact he had failed to get there in time for real, I don't feel like he did, like it's not his fault, right? So I feel like that also kind of muddied things, where he's like, he feels like, if I had just come a few minutes sooner. It's like, well, you were fighting a supervillain who was threatening to kill a bunch of people. Like,
yeah, but I think the whole point of that, like, I see what you're saying, but I feel like his motivation for stopping the supervillain at that point, based on what we know from the internal monologue, was about being a glory hog and sort of getting some action that he felt like he was missing out on by not being allowed on the main mission. So he's like, oh, well, this isn't as exciting, so I'm going to get some real excitement here. So yes, you're right. Like, he was stopping a supervillain that was holding another guy by the throat. But in the long run, his choice to try to not just run away immediately, which he didn't stop him. He stopped him from killing the guy. But that, for all he knows, Vandal Savage just chased after the police officers and killed all of them again. Like, he literally just turned his back and ran in the opposite direction after he realized he wasn't really having much of an effect against him. So I see what you're saying, but I do think it would have been his fault based on the fact, or not would have been his fault, but his motives for fighting Vandal Savage in those moments would have probably haunted him. It wasn't an innocent stop to do good. It was motivated by wanting glory and wanting to get in on something he felt was more action heavy than his little trip to Washington, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah, I think that's fair. I guess my thought is like, but my only counter to that is also that like Savage came to him directly. It's not like he heard about Vandal Savage and he like diverted from his route to go to go stop Vandal Savage, who was like robbing a bank in the middle of a city or something. So I don't know. Like, I just think I understand. I do think what you're saying is right. It's more about how his attitude towards the mission than about his actual physical actions. I think that's a fair point. And I feel very out to lunch on a lot of this Young Justice stuff we reviewed so far. Like, I haven't hated any of it. I feel like maybe I'm being super negative on this from a plot standpoint, but I do have good things to say about this. But yeah, overall, just like I said, I don't find the character of Kid Flash particularly likable, and this was a very Kid Flash heavy episode, and I thought they got maybe a little too cute with the double death fake out, and then like I said, I thought maybe there should have been like a more overtly selfish thing that Wally did that caused a delay for him or something. So
sure, that's fair.
Again, this is all personal preference, and we of course always invite you to reach out to us on our social medias to discuss what you think of this. So yes, I believe a 6 for you and a 4 from me for plot. Not a huge difference there, but that will move us on to our second category of the day, which of course is animation and visuals. And I think between the snowy atmosphere, a lot of really good work put in, I think, by the background designers on this team on this episode. But between Kid Flash and the bright red and yellow running against the sort of the kind of foggy whites and grays of the snow, and then you also have, as you mentioned, Cal, cutting away to a bunch of different these sort of snippets of these big battles with a ton of different superheroes, including our winter themed gear for all of the Young Justice characters.
The polar stealth suits.
That's right. I do question
the lead by not leading off with that thing, man. Like,
I do question why they were still wearing the stealth suits when they're working with Aquaman and the Flash, who are in like bright orange and green and red coloring. It doesn't feel like it's stealth at that point. But
I think maybe they have something. Maybe something has evolved in their skin because they're in the deep dark heart of the ocean where it's generally pretty cold. Mm-hmm. So maybe something has evolved. They've evolved in some way, or they have some sort of superpower that makes them impervious to various. That's why they can go shirtless everywhere. Mm-hmm. They don't succumb to the elements like the other people do.
Yeah, but yeah, my again, I don't quite understand why they kept the stealth part of it. If or maybe that's just the name of it.
Oh, the stealth part.
Yes,
that's
maybe it's part. well that's like it's fine. If you just said it was winter gear, I'd be fine. But they specifically say it's stealth gear. But this is decidedly not a stealth mission. Correct. That's kind of the whole point, is that the team for the first time isn't being sort of sent out on a covert mission. They're being sent out to work like arm in arm, hand in hand with the the full Justice League on this mission. So, but hey, despite my little nitpicking there, my annoying nitpicking, those suits look pretty darn cool.
They are awesome. This is one of the things that I feel like a lot of times doesn't make sense in cartoons, especially superhero cartoons. Occasionally you'd have some sort of adjustment where Batman and Batman the Animated Series may wear a parka or something like that. But one of the things that I remember, most egregious things, although I guess he was taken against his will, but in the Ra's al Ghul episode, I remember Robin running around with short sleeves, and honestly, one of the things that I really enjoyed about one of the small details that I thought that Jordan Gibson did on the latest Batman The Adventures Continue little mini Christmas story and 'Tis the Season to Be Freezing was giving Robin long sleeves. Like, it's cold outside, superheroes get cold too, so wouldn't it make sense that they wear some sort of extra suited protection to keep themselves warm, not just like the bat thermal underpants from this Batman 66? Like, there has to be a visual. This gives you the opportunity, and I get it, there's an investment in changing up character models and all of that stuff, but it feels like for designers this is just like Christmas morning here. You get to design all of these very unique suits and different looks for different characters, and I think they stand out very well. I thought Robin's was pretty awesome. He gets a bit of a face covering for his, and there's parka hoods, and it's just a visual smorgasbord, as we like to say here. It's pretty fun. And it's not just the Young Justice that gets them either. You get some of the Justice Leaguers also. Black Canary gets her own gets her own parka as well. I think I saw Red Tornado sporting some sort of polar gear too, which makes no sense being this thing is that he's a robot. But Jean Jones gets his some long sleeves added to his suit also. So yeah, it's one of those things where they took advantage of this episode being in a tundra like state to say, hey, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna give a visual update to our characters that makes sense and grounds this in a little bit more reality. I don't understand why Kid Flash running through the snow didn't need this suit also, unless, you know, was there a throwaway line that he said it was going to slow him down or something like that? But I thought that he was going to run like the snow wasn't covering the whole US or something like that. He was going to run to some place where there was going to be melted snow, but he literally runs through snow the entire episode. So for whatever reason, he didn't need his suit to, I guess the stealth part, he wasn't being stealthy.
Right.
So.
He specifically turns it off because he says he won't be needing the stealth. Right.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go. Yeah, that's honestly, I think that coupled with the winter elements and certainly the snow, you know, this whole episode, it's like we said, when we're first recording this episode, who am I kidding? It's live every time you press play. But when we're first debuting this episode, it's frigid cold. The Northeast is scheduled to get a giant like bunch of snow this weekend. So it felt right. It felt right with the characters on the screen also battling villains in the snow. And it's coupled with some of those characters that Batman goes and tries to shake down Hugo Strange at the end about, you know, whether it's Icicle or Mr. Freeze or Captain Cold. Those are the villains that are responsible, and you get maybe a little area that's winterized, or maybe one city, but for the entire country to be blanketed in snow, and it's not really one of those villains that we're aware of that is responsible for these giant weather machines, made this episode feel unique because of that. But I think overall, the visual standout were probably that those suits and stuff like that. But there was some good fight scenes also. I did feel like the scene, despite not liking the characters too much, the scene between Kid Flash and Vertigo and Vertigo's goons in the hospital parking lot was pretty great. I like when he finally overcomes Vertigo and is able to get out of his sort of Vertigo warp and attack him. He sort of does this thing where he throws the backpack that has the heart, slides it under this sheet of melted ice underneath a couple cars, and then he runs and slides after it. I thought that was pretty awesome. I will say there was a visual gaffe that had me deduct a point for this, and that occurs in the final scene that we mentioned, or the next to last scene in the hospital. Kid Flash wakes up in his hospital bed not wearing his gloves, and he's got bandages on his head, and for some reason he has stitches. I don't know where or why he got stitches, but he has stitches, and he's not wearing gloves. And then he gets out of the bed to reveal that he's, you know, this was a trap for Vertigo, and all of a sudden he's got his gloves back on, and then the very next second they cut and he has his gloves off again. So a little nod or homage to the Super Friends era of cartoon making here, because that stood out to me. I caught that very quickly there. But I think the rest of it is fun. I think the action sequences on those weather machines are great. Like I said, they cut and they break up the sort of monotony that might be of a single character running across with a blurred background, giving you internal monologue with these action scenes. There's a really awesome part where Superboy picks up this gun that's firing, and he disables it, pulls it right off of the surface of this vehicle, hurls it into the air towards Red Tornado, who's spinning around. It hits him, and he hurls it back down towards the other gun that's on the surface of this thing. I thought that was a great sequence there. Really neat looking. There's another moment as they're going in their separate directions at the start of the mission also, where they're riding this giant motorbike thing that flies. Also, the super bike is so
right
cool.
It's right out of the it's a little different design, but that's right out of the original Young Justice comic. I think it was an apocalyptian device or vehicle that they get that they fly out on.
Really cool. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool inclusion, and yeah, I love that design, and yeah, it's a cool nod to the source material as well.
There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, overall, I think that the brief fight scene that does occur between Kid Flash and Vandal Savage, I thought was done well. Also, visually, this is a very, very smooth running episode. There was a lot of action that occurred in those little beats there that I think honestly didn't make it feel like a monotonous episode of just one character running. I felt like it was done really well, paced really well. I think the tension was certainly kicked up a notch as you have him constantly kind of looking at the watch, and you get the countdown as you know that the heart only has a little bit left. And so I think that was all done very well, and I think this was a very strong episode visually. So for those reasons, and I think almost solely because of those awesome polar stealth suits, I ended up giving animation and visuals a very, very strong 9 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I was just 1 point lower on my score, 8 out of 10. A lot of the big moments I think you've covered of what I liked. I really like that Vandal Savage design. I think it's interesting because I never had an issue with the Justice League or the DCAU design, but you really get the more of the caveman feel from this version. Like they definitely leaned into that more, and he has these kind of real thick. He also kind of has he just looks like a man like out of time, which of course makes sense, but he's got like this very like sort of Victorian like outfit, like this very long coat that he's wearing, and then he has these big thick like 1860s mutton chops.
Yep.
And the longer swoop back hair, and then he has again the kind of the giant forehead, like the Cro-Magnon a forehead there, which you see the cultured caveman sort of vibe that they go for. I really like that design, and he feels really, when he shows up and Wally is in combat with him pretty quickly, it does feel like this is a really big threat. And
yeah, he's a very heavy looking character, and they do their best both with the sound design and I think the voice actor that we'll talk about in a little bit. All of that combines to make this character feel much more like a physical imposing threat than you would be, juxtaposition against the DCAU version of Vandal Savage, who is certainly a more refined, educated, cerebral type villain. So I like that it's a different version of that character, and it has its roots sort of in that character. I think also talking about the design of Count Vertigo as well, where Vertigo he's sort of directly based more off of that look that we've seen in the DCAU than perhaps his original comic book appearances, where he was a bit more visually different. This one, he doesn't have the eye patch thing that was in the DCAU, but he certainly has the blonde slicked back hair, and he has the cape, and he visually, I felt like, looked a little bit closer to that. There's green in his costume also. So I thought visually he looked a little bit closer to a homage to that DCAU look rather than perhaps his original appearance in the comics, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely a very pretty close homage. Like a lot of these Young Justice costumes, I think. Like the Kid Flash costume, for instance, very, very similar to the comic book look, just sort of adapted into this style. But yeah, I think overall, like we said, very, very strong visual episode. And without a doubt, I think the strongest part of this episode, and that will, speaking of which, move us on to our next category, Cal, which is music. We do have some familiar names there, as we have the dynamic music partners, all three doing the music for this week. I don't have a ton to say about music. I will say I always noticed with Young Justice that there's just a lot of time where there isn't music, or that the music is very, very low or very in the background. As you said, a lot of this episode is Kid Flash's inner monologue, and when he is speaking in that monologue, he kind of has this ethereal, echoey tone to his thing, and you don't really hear music there. So it's really only when either we're cutting to the team and the Justice League doing the kind of the big adventure with the weather machines, and then kind of when Wally has these direct moments of conflict with the two different supervillains. I feel like that's the moment. I feel like as we sort of already talked about, when Vandal Savage shows up, there gets this real echoey, sort of ethereal. It's still very slow and sort of plodding. That kind of, I think, gives some credence to what you said about it feeling like a very weighty character. He feels like a big imposing threat, and there's this real ominous sort of tone to the music when he shows up.
Yeah, I think that's a highlight. I think, as you said, the initial moment too, where we realize that, or when Wally he meets what he believes to be a doctor at the front door, and he gets the news broken to him that he believes that the girl has died. There's also, there's a bit of a letdown there, and there's music that accompanies that comes in that really, initially gives you that sort of tragic feel. And then as he's sort of sitting there in the hospital lobby and watching the news, and the doctors come up to him and he realizes that he's been duped, the music sort of comes back in as it sort of frantically realizes that he needs to get a hold of this person that took the heart from him. So and then I think when he wakes up, and they cut to his parents watching the news, and then they announce again that she's dead, and that's that the music sort of has that more somber tone, only for it to kind of kick back in again at the end. And as he and Robin are sort of summing everything up, and him sort of explaining to Robin the lesson that he's learned through this process, there's sort of a almost not quite like an 80s sitcom feel. That's the feeling, but not quite like an 80s sitcom, like all is well with the family, all end to it. But there's some music there that sort of gives you that same sort of feeling there. So, overall, this show is not one that relies too heavily on the music. It's a lot of synthesizers and mood setting music per se. So they do well what's asked of them. Obviously, the dynamic music partners are some 3 really legendarily good artists that have created a lot of music for DC animation and much more. So we know that the pieces that they wrote are what were asked of them. I just don't think that for the episode itself there was anything that necessarily stood out other than maybe a couple of those action beats. So for all those reasons, I ended up giving music 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I went just a tick higher. I went 6 out of 10. Like I said, I think the sort of ethereal tones and sort of the really echoey, somber nature of not only the Vandal Savage fight, but then those sort of quieter moments when he appears to have failed, and then when Count Vertigo sort of shows up right at the end there, I liked that as well. So yeah, nothing spectacular, but another good week of work, of course, from the 3 dynamic music partners. And that will bring us to our final category for this week. And it's a big one because there's like 400 people who voice act on the show. Thankfully, there's only a few that we really have to talk about, but I will run through the full voice cast here. Briefly on our young here on the side of our young heroes, we do have briefly Lacey Chabert as Zatanna, Stephanie Lamellin as Artemis, Danica McKellar as Miss Martian. Kari Payton is credited as Aqualad in this episode, but I don't think he has any actual lines. But
lots of grunts. He grunts.
Yes. But he is in there at some point. We also have let's see here, Nicole Dubuque as Iris West Allen, who I'll note was actually a regular writer on the series, and I think is still writing for the series now. So
that's cool.
Fun little way to sneak in a cameo there. But as far as some of our other actors, we do briefly have Adrian Pasdar as Hugo Strange, who folks would probably know best as one of the leads on the television show Heroes. If you are familiar with Nathan Petrelli on that show. That is that gentleman. Only briefly, as that's sort of as we said, sort of a continuity plot point that I'm sure will be picked up later in this season. But fun to note there. We do briefly have Cree Summer. I believe she plays both Wally's mom and the doctor that Wally is a creep to. So we have a familiar voice there. We have briefly Bruce Greenwood as Batman. And then Ariel Winter, who folks would know as one of the daughters on Modern Family, playing Queen Perdita on on there only briefly, but she does get a couple lines there. So a lot of like familiar television actors that only got one or two lines in this episode. But
yeah.
And then sort of the actual sort of main meat and potatoes here. Also, Jesse McCartney is Robin, of course. But we have, as far as the main ones here, we sort of talked about his imposing figure. And I think the voice is a big part of it, played into that as well. So we have Miguel Ferrer as, or Ferrer, I'm probably butchering that, I apologize, playing Vandal Savage. Folks might know him from RoboCop or Crossing Jordan. But again, I think really like a really good voice to pair with that sort of hulking design of Vandal Savage.
Yeah, I think it fits well, and I think, you know, we mentioned it. This is a very different version of that character as far as visually concerned. So yeah, it leads back to that sort of, as you mentioned, that caveman-esque looking character design and the heaviness of the character, a very hulking type design. So you have to have a deep, intimidating voice to go with it. And I would say that he does a very great job as far as communicating that and the way that he delivers his lines. I feel like his back and forth with Wally is great. I feel like he definitely plays a bigger part in this series and episodes we haven't reviewed just yet. So be interested to hear him sort of lead an episode and have more dialogue that sort of is outside of a one-on-one battle scene like this. But yeah, I think for what he does on the episode, really, really good.
Absolutely. And speaking of supervillains, we have Steve Bloom playing Count Vertigo. Folks would probably best know him as the voice of Wolverine in about 3 million different video games and cartoons and other places. Probably most famous for his Marvel role. But you know, he's doing like, you know, he's got that very sinister Eastern European bad guy going on, you know?
Yeah, he definitely is. And it's a European accent, that's for sure. Pretty indistinguishable accent of what specific Eastern European country. You could just say it's any of them, and you'd be like, yeah, that's exactly what they sound like. But yeah, it's a stereotypical Eastern European accent was called for. I don't know that it was a performance that would be winning any awards in my book, but if that's what was asked, he did a great job.
Yeah, I think that that's a pretty good way of settling it up. He's good. He's very much a very mustache twirling, very overt, sinister bad guy, and I think he plays that well. And then of course we have our lead of this episode, really the one who, as you mentioned, gets a lot of work to do in this episode. It's not only is the episode mostly focused on him, but he's got that inner monologue that sort of narrates the whole episode. So we have Jason Spizak as Kid Flash / Wally West. And look, I think my issues are not with his performance. It's just that I don't like this character, and and I find him a little annoying. Like, I don't think that any of the lines were delivered particularly badly, but kind of like what you were saying earlier, I think he's supposed to be coming off as like cocky and charming and, oh, what a rebel, but he's really just like, God, this guy's just annoying and kind of a sex pest.
Yeah, I would agree. I go back to what I said at the very beginning. This feels a lot like he's narrating my time playing as a character in a video game. Again, that's not his fault. That's how the story was written. But his voice would not be alien to me in a video game. So take that for what you will. I don't love the character, and I don't love the voice necessarily. It's okay. It's fine. But I don't think that the performance is bad. It's just not my cup of tea. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Like I said, I can't blame a lot of this on him, because again, this is the character that's designed, and you said maybe it's also that we're looking through and listening to this in a later time than it was originally created, and that obviously can affect things as well. But yeah, I don't think it's Mr. Spizek's fault. I think there are some parts. I think when he's sort of dealing with that initial shock when he thinks that he's too late and that the girl has died, or that I think he does, do some good work there. But yeah, a lot of this is just him either complaining or being a creep. So thumbs down to those parts of it. Overall, I ended up settling on a 5 out of 10 for voice acting. I don't think anyone's terrible, but I don't particularly think anyone's great in this one either.
Yep, I gave it the exact same score for the exact same reason, 5 out of 10.
Well, there you go. I believe that will begin to wrap us up, and we need to tally up our final scores right here. And adding everything together, Cal, it looks like I have arrived at a final score of 23 out of 40.
And despite disagreeing on a couple of these scores, I wasn't that far off. I ended up being in a score. Despite disagreeing on a couple of these scores, I ended up being not too far off there, as I ended up giving it a 25 out of 40.
Well, there you go. I guess we can touch on rewatchability. It's a little weirder to do it when it's not a DCAU proper show, because the show didn't have a million spin-offs that you have to decide if it plays into this or not. If you're watching Young Justice, you're probably you should probably watch it straight through if you want to get like a full understanding. As we said, there's definitely character elements with like Zatanna, or as we mentioned, Hugo Strange and some of the villains and stuff that's mentioned. So I don't know if this would not be one if someone was just asking you like, hey, give me like 3 episodes of Young Justice to watch to see if I like it. This probably wouldn't be on that list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think it seems like these episodes do follow some sort of connected, as you mentioned at the start, there are new characters here introduced. We have Zatanna, who was not here previously. We have Artemis, who we knew was coming, but was not featured in the episodes that we reviewed prior. But which, by the way, you can check out in the archives at DCAUreview.com if you want to listen to our prior reviews of Young Justice. But I would say that there certainly are some threads here that seem to be connected to the rest. Here we sort of have that scene at the end where Batman interrogates Hugo Strange at the who is in charge of this prison at this time in the show, as to who might have been responsible. And there's this sort of mystery that is, all of the supposed winterized villains were all under watch at the prison at that time. So they claim it couldn't have been them. So there's this mystery in the air as to who that was specifically and who was behind it, and what Vertigo and ultimately Vandal Savage's connection was, and what it will continue to be. And the plot points of Kid Flash kind of getting his heart broken by Miss Martian and Superboy moving forward with their romantic entanglement. So yeah, there are plot threads here that feel very important and certainly set up for further ones. So not having seen this series as a whole, I'm going to go ahead and give it the old pansy out 1 thumbs up and say that it's probably vital to the rest of the story in some form or fashion, but not having known or not really knowing what the rest of the series direction goes. It's hard to say whether or not how pivotal this is exactly. So maybe just watch it for the cool snow and polar stealth suits. How about that?
There absolutely is some great action.
This is an action figure creator's dream here. You literally created an episode that could have sold an entire line of action figures, man. What a missed opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. There definitely are some great visuals that are probably worth seeing. So
Unbridled capitalism took a big L on it.
Yeah, that's a fair point there. There's definitely merch money left on the table here with these polar stealth suits.
There you go.
But yes. All right, Cal, that will begin to wrap us up. Thank you everybody for listening to us this week. As Cal said, we get a lot of anytime that we do an Elseworlds and we do a Young Justice, we always get a lot of excitement from people who love this show, and it holds just as special a place in their heart as the main shows that we review our other weeks. So it's always fun to see people's different memories of that. And if you want to reach out to us, let us know what you thought of this episode or Young Justice as a whole. You can always reach out to us at DCAU Review on Twitter or on Instagram. Both places, it's the same username at DCAU Review. Leave us a comment or tweet us. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you think of this series. Are we wrong? Is Kid Flash super likable if you watch the whole series? Because I got to tell you, dropping in on this like bird's eye view that we've been doing, I do not like this guy. So I would love for you, and not in a debate me bro way, but in a if I'm not giving Wally a fair shot here, let me know about that, and we'll take it under consideration moving forward. But I think other than that, it's been already the end of January here, and before we wrap up here, Cal, we got to look forward to what we'll be doing next month.
That's right. We are, of course, headed back, Liam, to the very sunny skies of Metropolis. That's right. It's a Superman month coming up for the month of February, the Man of Steel. It's been a little bit since we've talked about him. As we've mentioned a couple of times, transparency, we only have a few episodes left of Superman the Animated Series that we haven't yet reviewed. So we'll be reviewing a couple of those. We might have some surprises on the horizon also about some things that we'll cover. But regardless, I think it's only fitting with your birthday coming up that we celebrated an entire month of the Man of Steel, your favorite superhero, just right after we celebrate you being born.
Absolutely. Can't wait to talk about the Man of Steel next week. And we want to once again thank everybody for listening, whether you do so on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on the Pod Tower YouTube channel. We appreciate you subscribing and leaving us a review if that is an option on your particular app of choice. But until next week, I am Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.